Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Paving the way for India to get instant access to details on Indians with Swiss accounts, a key parliamentary panel in Switzerland has approved an automatic information exchange pact between the two countries. The Commission for Economic Affairs and Taxes of the Council of States, a key panel of the Swiss Parliament's upper house, approved the proposed pact with India and 40 other countries, but suggested strengthening the provisions for individual legal claims. The proposal will now be submitted for approval from the upper chamber of Swiss Parliament in the winter session beginning November 27th. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if this move will help the Indian government fight against corruption. Joining me on the program today are Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Pravin, Parekh, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, and Sanjay Kumar, Senior Advisor, Deloitte, India. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Desai, I'd like to begin with you. Is this a shot in the arm for the government as far as fighting black money is concerned?
It'll certainly help, but don't count too much on it. I mean, the only thing this will catch are the fellows who are incompetent enough to open accounts in their own name. The big fish don't do that. The big fish have all sorts of shell companies and so on, and through which you cannot spot their beneficial ownership. But nevertheless, it's better than nothing. So, and it will certainly put some restraint on people who are planning to hold some of their illegal stash in Switzerland. So it helps, but don't count too much on it.
Okay, sure. All right, let me go across to Pravin Parekh now. Mr. Parekh, you know, from a legal perspective, how does this help India in fighting black money?
Well, I tell you, as far as the legal part is concerned, the upper house has already passed the legislation or providing the information. The difficulty is that lots of bank accounts have already gone from Switzerland and have gone to many countries, including Singapore, etc. So now that not much money is perhaps left in Swiss. But the difficulty is in implementation. It is all very well to make law, but how to implement and how they will implement is the real difficulty. And I do not think that the Switzerland government will go out of the way to implement this. They don't want to say that because they had a very bad reputation of the all world's black money was parked in Switzerland. That's for the last couple of decades. Everyone knew that. So they want to come out with some clean image. But I am not very confident as to how it is going to work and how much they will disclose and how it will work. As far as India is concerned, there was a time when huge Indian money was in Switzerland. Now that percentage had gone down substantially, and the Indians have now chosen to put in some of the Asian countries. So money is tax havens have shifted from Switzerland to these Asian countries. But it is also in Macau, Singapore,
sure,
Malaysia, Bahrain, Hong Kong, etc. So I am not very sure as to what is going to happen. On paper it may look good, but in practical reality, I don't think much will come out of this. Although people are very happy and they think there's a wonderful thing has happened and now everything will come out. But what will come out, when it will come out, etc. are all issues which this law is not going to decide.
Sure, okay. Your point taken.
It will all depend on how the government of Switzerland considers this and how they want to implement.
Okay, point taken. I'm going to put that point across to Sanjay Kumar, Senior Advisor, Deloitte, India. You know, couple of issues being raised by both our panelists. One, of course, do not expect too much out of this because a lot of the money has already moved out of Switzerland and to other tax havens. That is one point, of course. And the second one, of course, being we do not know how serious the Swiss authorities are in dealing with this problem and how much of information they will really divulge.
Frank, good evening, and to all the panelists and to you. You know, let us look at the historical perspective, from the historical perspective, how the Swiss authorities have built up, and things have not happened overnight. The first time the Swiss authorities brought any kind of resolution was in 2009. And then subsequently, in 2013, they decided that they will be part of the OECD Exchange of Information Convention. And subsequently, soon thereafter, they also worked out on a Tax Administration Assistance Act, TAAA. And so they have moved in a very, very sure-footed manner. And and once they have signed the OECD convention and agreed for whatever the convention, the OECD convention talks about, I think there is a little bit of seriousness on the part of the Swiss authorities, and surely they will be making enough efforts to that. However, as per the Article 7 of the TA Act, it says that the information cannot be used for, or cannot be, if it's just a fishing expedition, and it cannot, its integrity, etc., and its actual usage has to be as per whatever was the purpose that was mentioned by the tax authorities while seeking that information. So there are some bounds, and I'm sure they will try and work that out. There is there is a lot of information that they have, and as per some kind of estimates, as per Swiss Bank website, it's about quarter of the world's global assets are cross-managed assets are in Switzerland. So there is a lot of information that the Swiss authorities have, and at the same time they are very careful about its usage because they want to make it as precise as it can be. So I see that there is a seriousness on the part of the Switzerland, and once the parliament has done that, they will do that.
Okay.
The second is that the information flow, according to some understanding, will flow from 2019 autumn. So it's not going to be immediate. They are going to make certain preparation. They are going to make certain snapshots, which are yearly snapshots, which they are going to make available. And this is as per Switzerland-Russia agreement, and which I think will also apply in some manner to the Indian agreement also, which will get signed in some time.
Sure,
so
okay.
I would say that they are working on a very sure-footed manner, and they are serious about what they have already put in their statute, and the work on this has happened not overnight, but over a period of time.
Right. Sandeep Bamzai, Editor-in-Chief of the Financial Chronicle, joins us on the debate now. Is it too little too late? Because, the Prime Minister himself a few months ago said that, deposits by Indians in Swiss banks have dropped by 45%. So most of the money is already out of Switzerland. So what kind of information are they going to give us, and what are we going to do with this information?
Absolutely. And I think what is more pertinent here is that if you look at the 5 or 6 big exposés, as far as black money stash is concerned over the last several years, last decade or so, these are either whistleblower or work of investigative journalists. So whether it is Rudolf Elmer, the Cayman Islands guy, whether it's Hervé Falciani, whether it's Bradley Birkenfield, and then of course there's Panama, and then there is Paradise. So all these are either work of investigation or whistleblowers who have decided to out themselves and have given out information. Other than that, there is no real material that is available to governments, barring what happened with Bradley Birkenfield in the UBS case, which is very important, because it is then that the Americans decided to coerce, literally not just put pressure, but coerce the Swiss authorities, and through the Swiss authorities and the Swiss government, UBS was forced, again I use the word forced, to give out details on almost 19,000 clients and almost 19 billion black stash, which was with Switzerland. And I think that is the defining moment as far as black money is concerned with Switzerland, because thereafter it's all been, there's been a flight of alleged black money capital from Switzerland to other tax havens. And I think British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, etc., the new hotspots, and they've been there in the past as well. Now, the other important, the flip side to all this is, let us understand that opening a foreign bank account in any one of these tax havens, also prima facie, is not illegal. The government of India, through its LRS, liberalized remittance scheme, allows every single individual who has the capacity to remit up to 250,000 US dollars annually. So a family of 4, 1 million. Over a 5-year period, 5 million US. That is how Indians are buying property overseas. There was a news report recently which said that one of the biggest beneficiaries in the real estate sector is Dubai, where Indians are buying property. London is another destination where Indians are buying property. So, prima facie, let's understand, having a foreign account, even in the BVI or one of these places, is not illegal. As long as all the paperwork is legit, as long as you have used the Reserve Bank of India to make this, you have made the statutory, you have met the statutory requirements and done whatever is necessary. So in terms of information flows, sadly, we have failed completely, barring these 5 or 6 examples that I've given. Now let's look at our overseas amnesty scheme, which took place in 2015.
Yeah.
It's a complete failure. Complete failure. Now I give you the example of what has happened in Indonesia and even Argentina. In Indonesia, sometime in September last year, they did an overseas and domestic amnesty scheme where the rate of penalty, interest, penal interest was between 2 and 4%. They raised 342 billion US dollars. Argentina, in a similar exercise, has raised about 80 billion US dollars. Now, when you have penalty which ranges from 60 to 70%, when you have jail terms, remember that this is morally corrosive in any case.
Yeah.
Because genuine taxpayers like us are paying taxes,
Yes.
and then you're allowing somebody to come through the back door if he's being penalized. So people are not coming forward. Information flows are not there.
Sure.
All the information that we have is through these exposés that have taken place, and several of these whistleblowers have actually said the information is available with the Indian government, but the Indian government is not taking action.
Right.
Pakistan had a similar thing. The Prime Minister of Pakistan was indicted by a court of law. Why? Because of Panama Papers.
Sure. I'm going to take the discussion forward now and talk to Mr. Desai about that. Do we take black money as seriously as we should be taking it? Because the government has announced several measures to try and tackle black money. When demonetization was announced exactly 1 year ago, the Prime Minister said this is just one of many steps that I'm going to put in place to ensure that India is black money free. Have we taken the right, have we put the right step forward?
I think there are some things which have been done, which certainly, making it difficult to use cash in transactions which came with demonetization. I'm not saying that demonetization was such a bright idea, but I'm saying at least certainly it put a little grit into the below the wheels there. So that those things will help. The general sense that the income tax people are watching you will help. What I would say is keep it in 2 parts. One is it's a bit like the drug problem. On the one side, you have to look at the interdiction part, which is what is happening in terms of the stuff which is abroad. What's my leverage? Why did you mentioned the 2009, somebody mentioned the 2009 case, the USA. How did the USA get that leverage? The USA had the formidable leverage that every Swiss bank has to have a US correspondent bank. And the US government simply says, you guys play ball with us, otherwise you're out. You cannot operate. And no bank in the world can operate if it doesn't have a correspondent bank in the dollar country, which is the United States. So we must ask ourselves, what's our leverage? Elmer, for instance, has argued that why doesn't the Indian government use this leverage vis-a-vis Swiss multinationals? I think Elmer argued that. Saying,
Falciani has also argued.
That Elmer said, why don't you use your leverage? Say, you guys cooperate with us, otherwise we will...
As a sovereign, you have enough enforcement powers, even in a bilateral agreement with a country, to actually, go ahead and get information. But that's not happening.
Sure, yeah.
The second thing is, do remember, whistleblowers have done... But you can't use whistleblower information in the Swiss court. The Swiss, what they agreed to is really only an official exchange of information. And there, as somebody pointed out, you would have to be very precise. It would be like a crime investigation. Like a police are investigating a crime, they have to have precise information to go to somebody who says, did you meet this person at this time for this purpose? Something. You can't just fish and say, I think you may have something to do with it, tell me. So that won't work.
Nobody will give you the time of
Nobody,
day.
that will not work.
Yes.
So I think we have to get ourselves organized in terms of follow-up. We have a serious frauds office here. I think we will need something equivalent of that when it comes to things which are frauds which are being taken abroad.
We have an FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit.
We have FIU, but we're hardly staffed.
Yeah.
Hardly staffed. Even our serious frauds office is very. So I think we need to strengthen, and you should do it. There is a lot of fraud taking place. There's no reason why we shouldn't crack down.
Sure.
Second, look at it at domestic end. Why is it being generated? I would still say that unless you start solving problems at the land end, particularly, I mean, the amount of black money which is being generated through the nexus between land mafias, politicians.
We have the Benami Properties Act for that. Do you think
Well,
that
the Benami Properties Act will catch individuals. What we are talking of is large-scale transactions involving money where there is clearly collusion between the authorities who sanction changes in land use, etc., and the land mafias and others. Now, unless you crack down on that, I don't think you must stop the generation of illegal money. Today, let's be very frank. If you earned your money legitimately in India, there's no reason for you to avoid taxes. The tax rates are not very high. You can it makes much more sense to pay your 30% and have your money legit. The stuff which is going out, etc., is basically illegit money of one form or another. And therefore, ask yourself, how is it happening?
You know, Mr. Parekh, do we need to tweak our laws or come up with new laws precisely to deal with the problems that have just been raised by Sandeep Bamzai and Nitin Desai?
Yes, I think so. Laws will have to be changed and implementation has to be changed. You know, we have to show that we are serious. The government has to show that they are serious to implement this, because there are all our politicians perhaps have black money because they can't fight election within the amount with the election commission as prescribed. And the Indian money in the Swiss bank was 23,000 in 2004, which has now come down to 8,300 in 2015. And therefore all that money has gone. But even both America and Switzerland is also not keen to allow anyone to be prosecuted, etc. And there are very ifs and buts. When they say we'll disclose, there are too many ifs and buts, and therefore no Indian is going to be too much bothered about it. But the real thing is the government serious? Has any one of our previous government been serious about the black money? And as it is rightly said, that you can't purchase immovable property without the black money. Now what happens to that black money? It changes hands, and politicians is other category, and therefore it is very necessary that we as Indians have to make up our mind that are we now, as he rightly pointed out, that the tax rate is very, very reasonable now, and you must pay the 30% tax and you get the deduction, etc. But why are we not paying? Something in the psyche of Indians perhaps, that black money is a much valuable thing than a bank account money. So I don't know, something wrong with all of us, I must admit.
You know, I'm going to take that point forward that you just made with Sandeep Bamzai. I think that's a very valid point. As a people, we seem to be very averse to paying taxes, and somehow we don't seem to be tax compliant.
Nobody likes paying taxes. That's not the point. I think the important thing is to make sure that there are things you can do with legit money which you can't do with illegit money. Our real problem today is, if I want to go out and buy a flat with pure check payment, I have to start hunting. I can't go. You know, this is the problem. That the people who want to be honest are in difficulties when it comes to something like property.
Sure.
So I'd say that let's be very clear. Nobody likes paying taxes, but create an environment where it's much easier to handle legit money than illegit money. That's not true in India.
But as the process of formalization takes place, because let's understand, all these things that have happened have actually led to the informal, which is the black economy, and the white economy, the formal economy merging. As this process of formalization takes place, you will find, look at the real estate sector. It's down in the dumps. Why? For precisely this reason. Because there is no cash available to turn into white. The builder is not accepting. He's aware that there could be a problem. But there is another facet to this, which is related to the stock market, which is the P note, the participatory note, which is also known as the promoter note or the politician note, because that is the money that is round-tripped through all these tax havens and it comes back into our capital markets. You'll be surprised that it is at its lowest in the last 10 to 15 years because of all the curbs, etc., that have been put by the government of India. And more you will find that the use of participatory note, which allows the masking of the identity of the actual investor, because of stringent measures taken by the Reserve Bank of India and SEBI, you will find that it is coming down. The usage of these notes is coming down. That is a byproduct of all the action that the government has taken. But let us understand that to actually see tax compliance increase, I mean, you have a minuscule number of people paying personal income tax in this country. And till that aberration is not corrected, you will always have this problem, because the human mind is ingenious and people will continue to find ingenious ways, methods to turn their or to actually generate more and more black money through under-invoicing, over-invoicing and so many other reasons and ways. But I think the real issue is increasing tax compliance so that a broader part with a wider dispersal of the economy and the people who inhabit that economy pay taxes. That is the crucial thing. A process has begun, as I said, of formalization, but there's so much more that needs to be done back home in this country itself.
Indeed, lots more needs to be done back home in this country. How do we ensure that, we see more tax compliance? That is, I guess, a discussion left for another time, because we're running out of time today. But, as far as cross-border tax evasion is concerned, Sanjay Kumar, how big a problem do you think it is and how do we deal with it?
Well, cross-border is, on that, 2-3 things have happened. One is that the exchange of information is being tackled, and is being signed with many countries, and India has done remarkable on that. By now, I think about close to about 60 to 70 agreements have been signed. Apart from that, you also have BEPS-led actions on which India has been quite proactive in launching many of these and signing the MLI, which is the multilateral instrument, and by which that a lot of information exchange, etc., is going to take place. So India is part of the global restructuring and on the tax avoidance mechanisms, which are quite prevalent, and they are taking as many steps as is possible. But coming back to some of the issues which were raised by the earlier speakers, and on that, whether the government has done some remarkable work. And I think one thing which needs to be pointed out is the shell companies, going after the shell companies, which has been one of the menace of the corporates when they, when some of the they were being used for generating the black money. So there are effective steps which have been taken, and which is what is making the whole environment worthy of discussion. And I think we are in the right space, and that is a welcome sign.
All right. Okay. Quick closing comment from you, Mr. Desai, with the way forward.
Well, the way forward is let them prove their seriousness by starting with political funding. That would be one test. If they really address the issue of political funding, if they start addressing the issue of what's happening on the land market side. The RERA is important, but we still haven't touched the issue of land transactions adequately. So I think we should do things, and I agree, the pressures for compliance are increasing. The pressures for formalization of payment systems is increasing. These are all good things. We must continue pursuing them. But at the same time, make sure that the things where there is a certain degree of connivance between the political system and the perpetrators is slowly removed.
Sure. All right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Nitin, Desai, Sandeep, Bamzai, Pravin, Parekh and Sanjay, Kumar. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have today. See you again next time.